Scene with Kirk in that situation. Yeah, I didn't understand it. I was confused. However, I gotta watch the show. If you watch it, it plays out. I would love to tell you, but you know, just watch it. If you don't want to watch it, that's your business. But if you do, you know it, watch it. But I was confused myself. I had no idea that was gonna be said. I was blindsided, but it's all good. It won't be the first time, won't be the last time I get blindsided, right? Been getting blindsided my whole life.
Nobody expected this. Yandy and Rasheeda, the so-called ride or dies of love and hip-hop, are officially at war. And at the center of it all, a petty power move, a shattered career, and a friendship torn apart by scandal. When Kirk Frost decided to throw dirt on Mendeecees' name to deflect from his own mess with Jasmine, he didn't just start drama. He lit a match that burned every bridge in its path. Mendeecees was working to rebuild his life, stay clean, and get back in the game. But now he's being blackballed across Atlanta's scene, and it all traces back to Kirk. Now Yandy's had enough. She's not just calling Kirk out. She's pressing Rasheeda to check her man or risk losing their sisterhood forever. Is this about loyalty, jealousy, or something way deeper? Because when these two women collide, someone's marriage and career may not survive. At first glance, it looked like business as usual in the love and hip-hop world. Yandy Smith-Harris and Rasheeda Frost, two of the show's longest-standing queens, had managed to dodge the usual catfights and stay out of the tabloid mess. Loyal, strategic, and unbothered by the younger cast's antics, the two often presented a united front. They weren't just co-stars. They were women who had been through hell with their men and still stood tall. But behind the glammed-up brunches and sisterhood mantras was a ticking time bomb. And the second Kirk Frost inserted himself into Mendeecees' business, it detonated, taking their friendship with it. It all started when whispers began floating around the Atlanta scene. Whispers that Kirk was quietly making moves behind the scenes to blacklist Mendeecees Harris from getting work. After serving his time and returning to civilian life in 2020, Mendeecees was trying to stay clean, focused, and rebuild not just his name, but his brand. With Yandy's help, he had lined up appearances, launched a few minor business ventures, and even pitched a speaking tour about redemption and recovery. He wasn't asking for a handout. He was just trying to build something that didn't have a prison number attached to it. But apparently, someone didn't want that to happen. At first, Mendeecees couldn't figure it out. Meetings were getting canceled. Deals were stalling. Promoters were pulling out last minute. Nobody would tell him directly why. But the hesitation was there, as if his name was radioactive. Finally, a well-placed industry friend dropped a bomb. "Kirk Frost's been talking," they said. "He's telling people you're bad for business." Mendeecees was floored. Kirk? Of all people? It didn't make sense until Jasmine came into the picture. Yes, that Jasmine, the same Jasmine who rocked Kirk and Rasheeda's entire world years ago by revealing that she had his child. The same Jasmine who nearly destroyed their marriage on national television. The same Jasmine who, for some strange reason, never seemed to fully disappear from Kirk's orbit. According to Jasmine, one of her close friends had spotted Mendeecees at a bar, getting too cozy with a woman who wasn't Yandy. Allegedly, this wasn't a one-time thing. Jasmine claimed she'd been told Mendeecees was creeping regularly and that the woman involved was too scared to go public. And just like that, Kirk saw his opportunity. Kirk had been under fire. Again, rumors about him still messing with Jasmine, social media dragging him for not learning from his past. And just when the pressure was getting too hot, he deflected, tossing Mendeecees' name into the mess to buy himself time. Well, if they're gonna talk about me, might as well remind them that M ain't no saint either. It was a low move, even by Kirk's standards, and Mendeecees wasn't having it. He reached out directly, told Kirk to stop speaking on his name, to keep his mess to himself, and respect the boundaries, but Kirk didn't back down. He doubled down. He went to promoters, venue owners, and collaborators, telling them Mendeecees was risky, unreliable, possibly cheating, and not worth the PR fallout. He smeared him quietly, all while smiling in Rasheeda's Instagram selfies like nothing was happening. And that's when Yandy found out. It didn't come from Mendeecees. It came from one of her own business partners who informed her that Kirk had warned them against working with her husband. Yandy was livid. She thought it was a mistake, a miscommunication. But as she started connecting the dots, it all made sense. Her man's reputation was being dragged through the dirt, not by enemies, not by strangers, but by the man married to her supposed best friend. Yandy didn't come in swinging. Not at first. She tried to handle it like a grown woman. She called Rasheeda, set up a meeting, tried to understand what was going on. But Rasheeda came in defensive, standing 10 toes down behind her man. She insisted Kirk wasn't lying. She said, if Jasmine's saying something, maybe there's truth to it. You can't always blame the messenger. Yandy felt the slap in those words. You're really going to stand there, she said, and defend Jasmine over Mendeecees? My husband? You of all people, knowing what that girl did to your own marriage? Rasheeda didn't flinch. I'm not saying I believe her, she snapped back. I'm saying I'm tired of people acting like their man is untouchable. You think M ain't ever slipped up? Come on. That was it, the moment everything broke. Yandy stood up, slammed her phone on the table, and said what she had been holding in for years. You've sat beside Kirk through every lie, every betrayal, every humiliation. You don't get to talk to me about loyalty. You're not protecting your husband. You're enabling him. The fallout was instant. That one confrontation went viral before the show even aired. Crew members leaked details to gossip blogs. Other cast members started picking sides. Some said Yandy was overreacting. Others said Rasheeda was blindly loyal to a man who used her for cover. What no one could deny was the tension, and it was spreading fast. Kirk, instead of apologizing or owning his part, did what he always does. He deflected. He claimed he wasn't trying to ruin Mendeecees' career, just trying to protect the industry from drama. He even implied that Yandy was exaggerating, using the beef to stay relevant. That backfired hard. Because if there's one thing Yandy doesn't play about, it's her family and her name. And now, her gloves were off. It didn't take long for the blow-up between Yandy and Rasheeda to ripple through the entire love and hip-hop circle. Social media lit up with commentary, reposts, and fan theories. Some fans couldn't believe the fallout, while others said it was long overdue. But inside the circle, the gloves were off, and neither woman was backing down. Yandy had always been the type to ride for her people. She stood by Mendeecees through prison, through scandal, and through a marriage that, if we're being honest, hadn't exactly been a fairy tale since his release. But that loyalty, it had a limit. And watching Rasheeda side with Kirk, a man with a proven track record of lying, cheating, and manipulating over her own friend's husband, that was the final straw. Behind closed doors, Yandy started warning people in the industry about Kirk. He's the one blocking deals, she said. He's sabotaging Mendeecees out of jealousy and guilt. And guess what? People started listening. Promoters that had backed out before started coming back around. Yandy's team worked overtime to scrub the negative press and correct the narrative. But even as Mendeecees started seeing progress, the damage Kirk had done was already set in stone. The worst part? It wasn't even just about work. Yandy and Rasheeda were no longer speaking. The women who once shared family vacations, business events, and late-night phone calls were now airing out their grievances in confessional interviews and subtweets. And the tension? It boiled over during a cast event where both women were scheduled to appear. It was a pop-up fashion event hosted by another cast member. Rasheeda arrived first, looking polished and composed. Yandy showed up minutes later, not trying to start drama, but clearly not about to fake smiles either. The air got thick. Cameras caught it all. The awkward energy, the eye rolls, the sharp glances. Eventually, they were seated at the same table, and it was only a matter of time before things exploded. So, are we gonna talk about it or pretend everything's cute? Yandy asked, breaking the ice with a blade. Rasheeda didn't flinch. Depends. You here to talk or to blame me for your husband's mess? And just like that, the table went silent. Yandy fired back. My husband's mess? Girl, you need to check the man sleeping next to you before you try to speak on mine. Rasheeda leaned in. Oh, I checked him. But maybe if you did the same, he wouldn't be out here giving Jasmine something to talk about. Gasps. Eyes widened. Even the producers couldn't pretend to keep things professional. The tension had officially snapped. Yandy stood up. You don't know the facts. You're just parroting gossip because it gives Kirk room to breathe. That's what this is really about. Y'all trying to keep your own mess quiet by throwing mine out there. Rasheeda calmly sipped her drink. Funny. Sounds like projection. That was the moment everyone knew. This wasn't going to be fixed with a sit-down or a hug. This was war. And the audience ate it up. Within hours, clips from the episode were already trending. Yandy versus Rasheeda became a topic on every blog. Memes exploded across Twitter. Same men, different drama. Kirk's mouth is the real villain. But behind the jokes was a real shift. A fracture in the Love and Hip Hop royalty. Rasheeda went on Instagram Live later that week, trying to smooth things over, but not before defending her man once again. Look, she said, I don't condone everything Kirk does, but I'm not about to let someone come for my husband like he's the reason her house is cracking. Yandy wasn't silent either. In her own live, she clapped back. It's one thing to defend your marriage. It's another thing to let your man destroy someone else's just because he doesn't want to own up to his own dirt. I ain't the one. Fans were divided. Some rode hard for Rasheeda, saying she'd always handled her situation with grace. Others sided with Yandy, praising her for standing up and refusing to be Kirk's scapegoat. One thing was certain. This was no longer just about Jasmine or gossip. This was about two women who were tired of being made to choose between their husbands and their principles. And speaking of Jasmine, she didn't stay silent either. In a shady IG story, she posted, "Funny how the ones who stayed the quietest now got the loudest opinions. Truth hurts, don't it?" That only added fuel to the fire. Yandy reposted the clip with a simple caption, "Stay in your lane, sweetheart." The mess was real and it was deep, but behind the shade, the posts, and the on-screen drama was a deeper conversation that nobody wanted to say out loud. Mendeecees wasn't blameless. He had been distant. He'd taken his ring off. He'd said on camera that there wasn't much love left in the marriage. And now, a cheating rumor, true or not, was threatening everything Yandy had fought so hard to protect. So yes, she was mad at Kirk. Yes, she felt betrayed by Rasheeda. But deep down, there was a storm brewing inside her about the man she'd stood beside through a prison sentence and public scrutiny. A storm that she didn't know how to express yet. Because if Kirk's gossip turned out to be true, even just a little, then what was left of the trust she had fought so hard to keep? For Rasheeda, it was no different. She'd spent years rebuilding her marriage after Jasmine nearly destroyed it, and now here she was, stuck defending the very same woman's words just to cover for her husband's insecurities. It was twisted, it was messy, but in her mind, it was still worth protecting. The irony? Both women were dealing with men who had disappointed them repeatedly. Both had defended those men in the public eye. And now they were at war, not because they hated each other, but because they couldn't admit how much pain they were still carrying from their own relationships. And the cost of that silence? A friendship shattered. While the women were going toe-to-toe in public, the real trouble was simmering with the men behind the scenes. Kirk Frost and Mendeecees Harris had never been best friends, but they had maintained a surface-level respect, mostly for the sake of their wives and the brand they were both part of. But once Kirk's little smear campaign started affecting Mendeecees' business, that thin layer of civility was gone, and Mendeecees, he wasn't going to let it slide anymore. After catching wind that Kirk had continued dropping his name in meetings and warning potential collaborators not to mess with that guy, Mendeecees pulled up on Kirk directly. No cameras, no producers, no love and hip-hop theatrics, just two men and a confrontation long overdue. Word on the street is that the confrontation happened at a mid-tier industry event in Atlanta. Mendeecees spotted Kirk, walked up calmly and said, "I know what you've been doing. You need to stop speaking on me, period." Kirk, always one to act composed under pressure, smirked and responded, "I didn't say anything that wasn't already out there. You mad at the truth?" That's all it took. What started as a cold conversation turned into a shouting match, witnessed by several insiders and quickly leaked to blogs. According to sources, Mendeecees had to be held back by two security guards, while Kirk tried to play it cool and walk away. But his ego? That didn't recover so easily. Kirk took it personally. He felt disrespected, not because of what was said, but because Mendeecees had the nerve to confront him publicly. And in true Kirk fashion, instead of backing down or reflecting, he decided to get petty. That's when the rumors started. Within a week, new allegations about Mendeecees surfaced online. Claims of old affairs, speculation about secret DMs, talk of a woman from New Jersey who supposedly had a story to tell. No concrete proof, just enough whispers to stir the pot and reignite questions about whether Mendeecees had really changed since getting out of prison. Yandy knew what was happening. She'd seen this tactic before. First the gossip, then the headlines, then the bookings disappearing. She watched it happen to other men, other women. Now it was happening to her husband. And what made it worse? She knew exactly who was behind it, but Kirk wasn't done. After the verbal altercation with Mendeecees, he doubled down on his quiet sabotage. He started telling people Mendeecees was dangerous for the brand, unreliable, and still carrying baggage from the past. But what he didn't realize was that his own credibility was crumbling. Because while Kirk was out here trying to destroy another man's image, his own skeletons were knocking louder than ever. Insiders close to the show claimed Kirk and Jasmine had still been in communication, off and on, quietly, but consistently. One source even alleged that Kirk was using Jasmine's supposed knowledge of Mendeecees as leverage. If true, that would mean Kirk had never really cut ties with the woman who nearly destroyed his marriage, and it would confirm what fans had long suspected, that Jasmine wasn't the problem, Kirk was. Meanwhile, Rasheeda was in an impossible position. She was defending her husband publicly while privately questioning everything. She knew the energy between Yandy and Kirk was too heated to ignore, but she also knew confronting Kirk head-on would unravel years of carefully managed damage control. She had worked hard to repair her public image after the Jasmine scandal. She had rebuilt her brand, her businesses, and even her marriage. But now, all of that was in jeopardy. Again, Yandy, for her part, was trying to hold it together, but her patience was wearing thin. She'd spent so much time covering for Mendeecees, defending their relationship, and working overtime to keep their image clean. But now, thanks to Kirk's mouth, she was being dragged into mess that wasn't hers to begin with. She was angry, not just at Kirk, not just at Rasheeda, but at the entire system. The way women were expected to cover for their men, to smile through betrayal, to defend their marriages while their husbands did whatever they wanted. And now, she was being punished for trying to rise above it. To make matters worse, a blogger released an interview with a woman claiming to have messages from Mendeecees that painted him as less than faithful. The timing? Too perfect. The platform? One that had previously been used to leak stories about Kirk and Jasmine. And guess who they tagged in the promo? Rasheeda. It was a strategic hit, and Yandy knew it. She went live that night without makeup, without filters, and said this: "I'm not here to pretend like my marriage is perfect. We've been through it. We're still working through it. But I won't sit by while another man tries to ruin everything we've built just to distract from his own dirt. And if that means losing fake friends in the process, so be it." The live racked up hundreds of thousands of views in hours. Fans flooded her comments with support. Even people who had questioned her loyalty to Mendeecees were now saying enough was enough. Kirk had officially crossed a line, not just with Yandy, but with the entire fan base. And what about Rasheeda? She remained quiet. Not a post, not a comment, not a single word. That silence said everything. The lines were drawn now. The Frosts and the Harrises were no longer on the same page. Not professionally, not personally, and certainly not publicly. The friendship between the wives was fractured beyond repair, and the tension between the husbands was one bad moment away from becoming a full-on disaster. And still, the question remained: why was Kirk so determined to take Mendeecees down? Was it jealousy, guilt, or something else hiding in plain sight? Because if Yandy had her suspicions and the streets were already talking, the truth might be more explosive than anyone is prepared for. By now, the tension had reached its boiling point. The damage to Mendeecees' career was real, and Yandy wasn't letting it slide. Not after watching her husband fight to reinvent himself post-prison. Not after standing by him through years of struggle, only to watch Kirk Frost, of all people, throw gasoline on old rumors to save himself. But what if this wasn't just pettiness or jealousy? What if Kirk's motivation to destroy Mendeecees was much deeper and more personal than anyone thought? Behind the scenes, rumors began to swirl that Kirk's vendetta wasn't just about throwing shade or distracting from Jasmine. According to insiders in the Atlanta nightlife circuit, Kirk had once approached the same major brand deal that Yandy and Mendeecees secured, a joint media project focused on formerly incarcerated Black men reclaiming their lives and building new legacies. Mendeecees had been tapped as the face of it. Kirk turned down, quietly, professionally, but still denied. That stung. And when Jasmine came to Kirk whispering about Mendeecees being seen out at a bar, possibly cheating, possibly doing something shady, that was all the ammo he needed. Not just to cover his own tracks, but to crush an opportunity that had rejected him. Sabotage disguised as gossip. Jealousy dressed up as loyalty. Kirk had a pattern, and everyone close to him knew it. When he felt cornered, he'd lash out, not with fists, not with public meltdowns, but with whispers, with subtle moves that hit people in their pockets, not their faces. That's how he'd survived so long in the Atlanta scene, by playing chess while others were still reacting to checkers. But this time, He moved the wrong piece. Yandy wasn't about to let someone take her husband down while smiling in her face. And Mendeecees? He was done being quiet. After weeks of letting Yandy take the lead, he finally released a video message of his own. Sitting alone, eyes locked on the camera, he spoke directly to Kirk without saying his name. I did my time. I owned my mistakes. I came back trying to build something better, not just for me, but for my family. I never asked for a handout. I never pretended to be perfect. But I'll be damned if I let another man throw dirt on me just to stay clean himself. You know who you are, and you know what you did. The video went viral. Thousands of comments poured in. Fans stood behind Mendeecees. Even some former castmates posted messages of support. What was once a quiet war had now become a public reckoning. And for the first time in a long time, Kirk Frost was cornered. And Rasheeda, she could no longer stay silent. The pressure from fans, the questions from the media, the awkward tension between her and Yandy, it all came to a head. In a special one-on-one interview for a podcast, Rasheeda finally broke down. With glassy eyes and a deep sigh, she said, "I've stood by Kirk through a lot. I've protected our brand, our family, and our privacy. But I can't stand by while he tears down another man just to avoid his own mistakes. What happened with Jasmine? It should have ended years ago. But if my husband crossed the line with Yandy and Mendeecees, then that's something I have to deal with. As a woman, as a mother, as someone who's tired of cleaning up other people's mess." That moment, raw, unscripted, honest, earned Rasheeda sympathy from many fans. But for Yandy, it was too little, too late. The next time the two women crossed paths was at a reunion filming. The tension was still there, but it was quieter now. Not because things were better, but because the battle lines had already been drawn. They sat on opposite ends of the couch. No greetings, no hugs, just silence. When asked by the host about their falling out, Rasheeda kept it neutral. "I still got love for Yandy, but we're not in the same place right now." Yandy didn't bite her tongue. "I don't hate Rasheeda, but I can't respect a woman who lets her man ruin other people's lives and then pretends it's not happening. We're too grown for that." The internet had a field day with that clip. Commenters flooded the timeline with takes. Yandy said what needed to be said. Rasheeda always playing cleanup crew for Kirk. Kirk and Jasmine been stirring the pot for years, and now it's boiling. But underneath the viral moments and trending hashtags, something much deeper was happening. A shift. Fans weren't just talking about Mendeecees and Kirk. They were talking about accountability. About how women like Yandy and Rasheeda have had to carry the emotional weight of their partner's mistakes for too long. About how sisterhood crumbles when silence becomes complicity. And maybe, just maybe, that's what this entire situation exposed. Not just a friendship gone sour, not just a career derailed, but a pattern of men using women as shields, of women standing by those men while losing themselves, of friendships sacrificed in the name of loyalty to men who never deserved it. In the weeks that followed, Mendeecees finally secured a new deal, smaller, quieter, but still a step forward. Yandy scaled back her appearances and focused on her businesses. Rasheeda? She kept doing what she's always done, showing up, smiling, and trying to maintain peace in a home that has never known it. And Kirk? Well, the industry was watching. And this time, they weren't buying the image he was selling. Because when the dust settled, one truth stood above all. Kirk Frost didn't just try to ruin a man. He tried to bury a legacy. And in the process, he exposed his own. When loyalty starts looking like betrayal, the lines between friendship and survival get blurred real quick. Yandy and Rasheeda were supposed to be the unshakable duo of love and hip-hop. But when Kirk Frost went after Mendeecees to save face, everything unraveled. What started as petty gossip turned into career sabotage, broken trust, and a sisterhood shattered beyond repair. So now we ask, was Kirk ever really trying to protect his marriage or just protecting his ego? Did Rasheeda stay silent too long? And can Yandy ever truly forgive what happened behind the scenes? Sound off in the comments below, because this one cuts deep. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications, because the drama in this industry never sleeps. And trust, the next chapter in this story might be even messier than the last. We'll be right here to break it all down.